right, so tonight we're talking about spending less and getting more from your healthcare. So there's actually a misnomer in America about healthcare. And what it comes down to is that there are really two systems of healthcare. There's healthcare and disease care. One will actually treat diseases or go after a disease process, but it doesn't treat health. Another one will base its system on how healthy you are and how much you can grow. So what I'll do is I'll start with the disease care system and explain some of it, and then explain the healthcare and indicate why there's two different systems and why one costs a lot more than the other. So if you look at a disease-centered system, you're going to look at people and they're going to deal with it one way. They're going to be dealing with things in an acute way. They're going to wait until something really bad happens. And so basically they're saying, I'm healthy until I feel sick. And that's a disease or symptom-based care system. So it means if you look on the continuum of health, here's 100% health, and here's death. And what they do is they wait until they've lost 60% function. At 60% functional loss, that's when a symptom will pop up. Now there's a problem with that, because most people will go through a system and they'll say, well, okay, as long as I have no symptom, which means they're somewhere in here, I'm healthy. But as soon as I get a symptom, and I go just a little bit over here, I'm gonna freak out and we've gotta do something. But here's the problem. Your body will go, okay, we're gonna knock you out. We're not gonna let you do anything. We call this sick. So we get sick, and it makes us come up a little bit. And then we feel good. Maybe we're hanging around at 58 or something like that. We feel good and everything's okay. And then we get an emotional, chemical, or physical stress, and our nerve system goes down because it can't communicate correctly, and the functionality decreases, and then we go back down, and then we're sick again. And we see this a lot in people who study, in students. So what happens is they do study, then they go out and do a little chemical stress through alcohol, and then they get sick for all Christmas break. Or they get sick for Thanksgiving, or they get sick for, and this is common among students because what's happening is they're stressing themselves out here, physically by being in hunch positions, chemically by, some of them take mind-altering substances, some of them take things like Ritalin or Adderall, things like that to make them think quicker or memorize quicker. And then after the tests are done, then they'll take depressants such as alcohol to calm their bodies down. So they're stimulating it up, and then when they don't want to be stimulated anymore, they're depressing it down. And so they'll hang around here and they'll flip-flop. And that flip-flop is where most people sit. Now here's the problem, is as you flip-flop back and forth, your body doesn't heal. So to heal means you have to get all the way back to 100%. So what happens is, you'll sit here, you'll get sick, and then you'll come back, and you'll feel okay. But when you come back and feel okay, your body's actually not growing all the tissue back, because some of it's dying. So it'll be at 61, and then it keeps going down lower and lower and lower. And as you go on that roller coaster, you get older and older, and you can't heal as quickly. And people say that's old age. Now, that's not true. I have other ways to say that, but it's not true. It has nothing to do with old age. And an easy way to think of this is you literally know of people who, like Jack LaLanne, who at the age of 94 swam the English Channel. Was in really good shape, ran, took good care of himself, was also, by the way, a chiropractor. So if you keep yourself healing and remaking itself every 9 months, and that's what most scientists agree on, is that every 9 months you remake yourself, then you'll keep growing health. Now if we go in the sick care system, what happens is we have a symptom. And what we've been taught by television and drug companies is if you have a system, you're sick. The problem with that issue is if you have a symptom, all it means is you have a symptom. It doesn't mean anything. because we associate things with it, and we think, okay, a symptom means it's bad. So I'll give you an example of how the two systems differ between sick care and health care. Say I'm on the Pacific Coast, and I'm up in Seattle, and maybe I walk out on a nice beach. The water's pretty cold there. So you walk into the water, you got your feet down there, and like, oh, this is real nice. Then about 5 minutes, 6 minutes into standing there, all of a sudden I start getting a headache. Now, one system, and what we've been taught or brainwashed as a society, is let's treat the symptom. So what would most people tell you to do?
Take an Excedrin.
Take Excedrin, they take an aspirin, take all these things. Okay?
For the headache.
For the headache, right? So we're going to get rid of the headache by taking a chemical.
But you're still leaving your feet in the cold water.
Shh, don't tell my answers.
Cheater.
Exactly. So my feet are in the cold water. That's what's causing the headache. So until I move my feet out of the cold water, the problem's going to keep happening because the blood got cooled and it's causing the headache. So we have to ask, what is the headache caused by? What is it showing me? Is it an emotional thing that I will not deal with? And most of the time it is. Is it something physical that happened? Did I get in a car accident? Did I have some sort of trauma happen? Am I detoxing from something? You know, you get a headache after you drink a lot of alcohol because you're detoxing from something and you're dehydrated. Is it dehydration? Why don't we ask bigger questions than how do I get rid of the symptom? Why don't I ask, why do I have it? What caused the problem? And that's the differential, is one goes, this is the symptom, we'll treat it. And we'll treat it by using one or two methods. We'll drug it to death or cut it out. That's the whole allopathic or symptom treating model. And the thing with it is that model is interesting because the more obscure the technique and the more greater ability to have you damaged, the more expensive it is. So anything new is really, really, really expensive. And we think that the new, really, really expensive thing will help us. Or you can go on to a vitalistic, holistic technique, such as a chiropractor. And what we look at is saying, okay, you grew this problem. It took you many years of faulty neurological pathways to grow this problem. How about we try growing it back? And you can grow yourself back into health. But we're so brainwashed into believing that if it's a $100,000 surgery, it's going to make us better. And there's been placebo studies and studies showing that you can take somebody that has knee pain, cut a little hole in them, tell them you did the surgery, and tell them everything's good, and they'll walk away and the knee pain will be gone. So what really caused the knee pain? Because the truth is, pain is not a physical thing. It's all perception. And most people don't understand that. That's why you can have, and a simple way to look at it is in sports. Certain sports, the person falls over, or like, say baseball, a guy has a hangnail and he won't play. And then you have football players and hockey players, and they'll get slashed and have broken bones and they'll run around and still play the sport. It's all conceptual. So it's how you've been trained or learned teaches you how the pain will actually work. So you're looking at two systems. One system that the majority of the US has been taught is that the more expensive it is and the more likely it is to kill you, the better it is. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because that's literally, well, it's an experimental thing. That means we don't know what's going on. Or we can look at the system that God made or the system that we're made with and say, okay, it can take one cell and turn us into 77 trillion cells. It knows exactly how to make every germ layer, which are the 3 layers that make every piece of tissue in your body, differentiate or make different layers, turn out, and by day 21 have all these little nerve buds, and then control everything, make everything work correctly. And it can literally take you from one cell and make you into 77 trillion cells. And yet we're going to trust something man-made. So it really comes down to, who do you want to trust? Do you want to trust your body's ability to heal? Or do you want to trust something that within 10 years will be on the news or will be on television saying, if you have this, let us know, and we'll sue and we'll get some more money? So it really comes down to, who do we trust? Do we trust a pill, potion, or lotion? Or do we trust our body's ability to heal, that innate, inborn body's ability to heal? That's the big thing that it comes down to. So if you understand all healing comes from within you, then we understand we can trust ourselves. But there's a disconnect people have. They go, okay, I cut my finger and I know it'll heal. Okay, why can't all your organs heal? Why can't all your muscles heal? What's the change? We know that if we cut our fingers, it'll heal. We know it's not the Band-Aid, pill, potion, or lotion that makes it heal. So why do we think if we give ourselves something toxic, like a pharmaceutical, that that will make us heal? Because all that does is overstimulate or understimulate. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because this is the facet that most people have been taught, is that if I treat this symptom, I'm healthy. If that was true, that means the more drugs I take, the healthier I'll get. But it doesn't work that way. We all know that.
The more drugs you take, the more drugs you take.
Exactly. The more drugs you take, the more interesting direct effects you get. And I call it direct effects because the drug caused the effect. They'll call it a side effect because they don't like it, but it's directly affected. If you take this, you will get this problem. If you stop taking this, that problem goes away. So it's real simplistic. So that's the one facet of society that a lot of people fall into because they have been taught that if my symptom's gone, I'm healthy, which is not true. Because the day before somebody's diagnosed with cancer, they usually feel perfectly fine. The day before you die of a heart attack, you feel perfectly fine. And so the problem comes in is that we start looking at the system as a symptom-based care or a acute-based care or basically a firefighting care. You know, we gotta put out that fire and we're gonna save you. Okay, and I've heard crazy things. Well, I had to have the surgery. And I go, okay, so they strapped you down and drug you into the room and cut you open. No, I went. You didn't have to have anything. You don't have to have anything done. You hear people believe that they have to have certain things done and they don't. It's their choice. And my goal as a doctor of chiropractic is to educate you that there are more than one choice. There are more than one choices. That your body can heal from within, but we have to make sure there's a specific communication going on correctly. And I'll simplistically explain how the two systems work. So right now, if we live the average American's lifestyle, we will go bankrupt the last 6 months of our life because that's where all our money goes. We don't take care of ourselves. Now I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys actually do proactive things. But if we don't take care of ourselves, we'll get sick, we'll go into the pharmaceutical-based industry or the sick care industry, and by going in there, we will spend all our money and we'll be bankrupt and we'll leave nothing to our children. And most people in the last 6 months of life will spend on average between $100,000 to $250,000
Jesus.
on their sick care. They call it health care, but on their sick care. Now, here's another way to look at it. Why don't I invest a little money early in my life? You know, why don't I invest $10,000 in the first 20 or 30 years of my life? And then by the time I'm 60 or 70, I can take that $200,000 and go on a yacht and hang out with my grandkids, or I can go play, or I can do anything I want, because why don't I do preventative medicine? Why don't I not wait until I have a symptom? Why don't I take care of it before it turns into a problem? Why don't I look at myself as, and I don't like this analogy, but even if we look at ourselves as a car, we know that if we put oil in every 3,000 miles, the car will last for 200, 300, 400,000 miles. And if it's one of those crazy Mercedes or Volvos, it'll last 1,000,000 miles. And we also know that if we don't change the oil, that car will die. So what is that oil application in our life? What it is for us is a properly functioning nervous system, our ability to adapt. Because dysfunction and disease, they come from the inability to adapt. If you can't adapt to a bacteria, you have a bacteria infection. If you can't adapt to a virus, you have a viral infection. If you can't walk correctly, all of a sudden you can't adapt correctly, you will all of a sudden have a joint problem. So it's your inability to adapt, and that's controlled by communication. And that's what a chiropractor or a doctor of chiropractic takes care of. Communication, communication, communication. Our goal is to make sure that you can communicate properly to your body and from your body back. If we can do that, then you can heal yourself because your body is constantly being remade. You're not a machine that will literally wear out. And this is why you hear about people, they get a hip replacement and then in 10 years they have to have another one. Because those hips are made out of metal. And as they move, little pieces of the metal get worn off and then the hip will start to break down. The cool thing about the body is the body continually remakes itself. If it's in proper alignment, it will wear out at the same speed that it will heal itself. If it isn't, that's how you start getting problems. So our goal is to make sure that your communication between your body and your brain is at 100%. And if it's at that 100%, you remake yourself better every 9 months. This is why I love taking care of babies. So people say, well, why would you take care of a baby? They have no symptoms. I'm like, you're in a sick care system. You're waiting until the baby's almost dead, and then you're going to bring him to somebody. And I go, why don't I make sure the baby communicates correctly? And if they communicate correctly, then I know they have a better chance of healing themselves, not getting colic, not getting SIDS, not getting any of these crazy infant problems, or thrush, or blah, 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 all these different things, because the baby can adapt correctly. But the baby has no symptoms. Exactly. Am I going to wait until my house is on fire before I'm going to fix the electrical box in the basement? Or am I going to wait until my roof has holes in it before, and my house is completely flooded before I fix the roof? No, these are all simple things that we would do. We have holes in our roof, we're going to fix them before it leaks and destroys the house. But yet with our bodies, we've been tricked into saying, well, it's just a little pain, we'll just muscle it out, we'll just walk it off, or it doesn't really matter. I can just take care of it that way. Those are just indicators that you have a problem. And if you don't take care of it, it'll turn into a bigger problem. And I hear this all the time when people come in. You know what? When I was young, I had a little hip problem, but I never really thought about it. And then they have a big hip problem. And then they have a hip replacement. And then they have to have another one. And the sad thing is talking to my orthopedic buddies, you can only get 3. And after that, your hip is gone. There's no bone to attach to anymore.
Ouch.
And then you're done. So if you have to get one every 10 years, hope you start when you're 70 or 80. Or we see people in their 70s and 80s and they're walking around fine. So what did they do? Did they do something preventative?
Yes.
Exactly. Did they take care of themselves? Yes. Some cultures, it's a de-stressor. Well, guess what? A lack of emotional stress will stop you from subluxating yourself. It's that neurocommunication. And so the way I like to explain to people is this way. Think about when the first time you had a major emotional, physical, or chemical stress in your life. And if people tell me 5 years ago, I'll be like, that's nice. Let's go back to when you were a kid. They're like, oh no, it was only 5 years ago. Okay, really? You never got in a fight with your mom and dad? You never had a boyfriend or girlfriend break up with you? You never fell out of a tree or had a brother fight with you? Or exactly, you have all these things.
Trampoline accidents.
Yeah, we never had exactly. So let's say it happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So let's say we're a 20-year-old and it was birth. Most people, the first trauma is birth because you get ripped out of the doctor. And even if you don't get ripped out by the doctor.
Ripped out of the doctor?
Out of the mom by the doctor. You're correct. So you get ripped out and it tractions the neck. And we see this. Literally, moms will tell me, I felt my butt come off the table. But that couldn't have been true. And I've heard it so many times. I go, no, it's true. That when your C-section happens, they grab the kid by the head and they rip the kid right out of the mama. And the butt comes off the table. And you think about it and you go, okay, if I did that to my child in front of anybody, that would be child abuse and they'd take it away from me. But yet we'll allow them to do it as a medical intervention so that somebody doesn't get sued. That's a whole nother topic I can go down. But the child has trauma, and then all of a sudden we have this high prevalence of SIDS, sudden infant death. Well, let's think about this. The top vertebrae in the neck can rotate, because we're getting twisted out, puts pressure on the brainstem, and the baby turns its head and puts a little more, and then it doesn't wake up in the morning. It's literally that simple. And they're like, oh no, you have to have your kid sleep on your back. Okay, well, we just adjust the child and then it can do whatever it wants. It's that simple. So let's go back. Okay, you're a 20-year-old person and you've never been checked for health care. You've been checked for sick care, but you've never been checked for health. So nobody talks to you about your health quotient or how healthy you are, how well you're communicating. And you work and you go through life and you have different emotional, physical, and chemical stresses. And then all of a sudden you come into me because you have a neck pain or a back pain or a headache or something like this. And the thing that caused it was birth. And you go, I don't know, what could it ever be? Well, you don't think about how many times you jumped off the couch when you were a 2-year-old and hit your head, or how many times you fell off things or did all these things. And we never took care of anything. And so when you're a kid, you're completely made out of, you could say jello, but you're completely made out of cartilage, which is squishy. It doesn't break. It's really cool stuff. But the problem is, if you jump and you keep rotating that squishiness, the bones form rotated out of position. And then it's harder for me to help you because it's been formed out of position. So that's why I love taking care of kids. So if you take care of somebody and they develop correctly, then it doesn't take me months or years to get you into proper neurological alignment. It can take a visit. Yes?
At what age are your bones fully developed?
Each one's different. So
Well,
each,
for like women, around what age?
so you're completely ossified by around 18 to 22 is what we were taught. But so when you're born, you only have a couple things that are actually ossified.
Mm-hmm.
You have some parts, but mainly it's your clavicles that are ossified, and that's why you can break your clavicle when you're born. That's why the baby can actually have a broken clavicle and patella.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is all cartilage.
Patella's your kneecap?
Yeah, your kneecap. So let's go back to that 20-year-old that was subluxated at birth and never had anything fixed. So 20 times 365 days. Let's say it's roughly 8,500 days that you've been out of alignment. Does that sound about right?
Sure.
Sounds good to me. We can even say 7,000 days. But what happens is the ability to adapt is compromised because that stressful event has caused you to change your posture. Now, posture is this important. If I walk into a room, what emotion am I feeling?
Despair and despondency.
Yeah, I'm sad, right? And we know that by posture. If I'm like this, how am I doing?
Confident.
Confident, happy, everything's okay, right? The same thing happens with your body. If you start walking around crooked, it will change your ability to feel happiness. It will change your ability to work correctly. What they found through some research is that your ability for your limbic system, your system of emotion to function correctly, is directly tied to your spinal cord and the sensations going into it. So if you fuse an area of the spine, that person will never be able to feel 100% happiness or state of ease again, because that will stop the stimulation of a specific part of the brain and the motion will not happen anymore. So your ability to feel happiness is directly linked to your spine and your body's ability to communicate. So that's that nerve system. So we all know this. How do we feel after we lay in bed for a day or two?
Like crap.
Like crap. And we're not happy either. Because we're not stimulating our brain. We're not stimulating the limbic system. So there's the meso and or the small and the big one. The small one's actually in your brain. The limbic is the emotional center. The big one is actually your spinal cord. So the ability to stimulate that correctly is what leads to happiness. So when you look at this, there's two ways to do it. Am I going to wait until my body's broken down to do something? And that's going to cost a lot because we're going to have a huge intervention. We're going to have a surgery. We're going to cut something out. Then we're going to have to do a bunch of rehab. And we're going to have to do a bunch of things. Or I'm going to do a bunch of little steps that make sure I'm okay. So most people don't get sick because of lack of knowledge. They get sick for lack of taking action. If it's eating an apple a day will stop you from having a heart attack, how many can eat an apple a day? Oh yeah, doc, they just won't do it. The ability to take small actions over a long period of time is what changes things. If you take one big action, that's when problems happen. And that big action is going to be a surgery. But if you take small repeated actions over a long period of time, that's how you'll change things. So it's an easy analogy is, you know, can you take a hammer and chop down an oak tree?
Given enough time. Yeah.
Given enough time you can, right?
Sure.
Just little chips every once in a while. So can you take a body that is going towards sickness and over time change it? Yes. And this is why there's some philosophical differences between professions, because one profession is a crisis-based profession, and they will only take care of you when you're having a crisis. If you went in and said, I have no symptoms, I want to see how healthy they are, they're going to run a blood test and look at disease.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way for somebody to go into, unless you go into certain psychology things, but even with that, there's not many people that teach positive psychology. And look at it and go, how do I get better? Well, we don't know how to do that. We know how to find if you have a disease. That's two different systems. Compared to somebody like myself that says, okay, right now, you don't have arthritis, you don't have muscle problems, you don't have any issues, but you have a deactivated quad because of a subluxation in your low back. Why don't we change that so it stops your body from twisting? And then that'll stop you from growing sickness. So what I'm looking at is making sure everything communicates properly so that you don't grow the dysfunction. Because dysfunction is grown, disease is grown. It's not just some random thing that fell out of the ether. You'll hear people say, well, I don't know where this cancer came from. Well, you've been growing it for 30 years. Well, I don't know where this heart disease came from. You've been growing for 8 years, yes?
Is it true that some people say that eating red meat causes cancer?
Yes and no, it depends on where you're getting the food. If you get pure organic meat, it actually has omega-3s in it, and you're okay. The red meat that we get in, say, the grocery store, it's been fed to cattle that have been kept alive through antibiotics.
Right.
That's the biggest antibiotic use in the US actually. And they're also fed nothing but corn, and corn causes inflammation. So you have a cow that is completely full of inflammation, and then so basically it's full of pus, for lack of a better way to explain it. And that is what's causing the problem. As well as it's pumped full of estrogen, and estrogen is a precursor or cause of some cancers.
It's better to eat grass-fed animals then?
If you eat grass-fed organic animals, they will actually have omega-3s, the same thing fish have in them. If you eat like a cow or a chicken or something that has been industrialized, a lot of them aren't even able to move, and that will cause them. They're literally up to their legs in sludge, like cow crap and a bunch of stuff like that, and they can't move. And because of that, what they're fed as well, like bovine spongiform encephalitis, like BSE, that's because they were feeding dead cattle. And a cow is not made to. It's a herbivore. It's not an omnivore.
Mm-hmm.
It can't eat. It's not supposed to eat meat, and that's why they're having problems. So. If you can get a normal fed, grass-fed piece of beef, it's really good for you. If you can't, then you get all these side effects because of how it's raised. And what you're looking at there is okay, so you have a piece of meat, and say you have two pieces of meat and they look exactly the same, but how did we take care of it? It's the same with you guys. How are we taking care of our bodies? You know, you may look the same on the outside, but how are we neurologically functioning? Why is it that when I see people under care, they barely ever get sick, and if they do, they recover 2 to 3 times faster than everybody else? Because that nerve system controls it. Why is it that when they injure themselves, they recover 2 to 3 times faster? And we saw this on teams like the Utah Jazz. When they won all their playoffs and they won all their rings, they had a chiropractor taking care of their team. And the average was a half to 1/3 as long sick time because they were getting adjusted. Now it's not the movement of bone, it's the changing of the nerve system. So if we go back to that person, they have 7,000 days of sickness trained into them of how to adapt. I literally have to adjust them, stimulate their brain to make a new neural pathway. And that new neural pathway is what takes time to change. So am I treating the symptom? No. Do I ever treat the symptom? No. Do I make communication happen? Yes. Is communication the key to every relationship, including you and your body? Yes. If they can communicate, your body will heal itself. Truthfully, I am no good at treating symptoms. If we want to treat symptoms, we cut them out or drug them to death. And that's what the allopaths or the medical people do. But if we make sure you communicate correctly, then you can heal yourselves of literally almost anything. And I mean almost everything. I've never said that I've treated cancer, but through care, I've seen cancer go away. I've seen diabetes go away. Did I treat the diabetes? No. Did I make sure the communication happened correctly and the body healed itself? Yes. Depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr, all these different things are a nerve system that's exhausted. So what we do is we reconnect it, the nerve system will heal. And then your body heals itself. So the big takeaway is this. If we wait until we're at critical mass or critical care or in a big symptom crisis or crisis care, it's going to cost a lot of money because you have to do a lot of intervention because you have a lot of time spent causing the problem. Or we can say, you know what, I'm just going to put a little bit in each day, a little bit in each day, and you get better. It's just like going to the gym. You go a little bit, 1 to 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week, all of a sudden you change. Your body's changed, everything changes. Or do we go every day for 3 years straight? You know, we can do it either way, but one is a lot easier because it's easier on your body and your ability to heal and gradually change your psychology, your physiology, and how your body takes care of itself. So what I want you to understand is we can either look at it as a crisis and deal with it as a crisis, and that's what most people do, and that's why there's a lot of problems. Or we can say, you know what, I'm going to do preventative, health management, wellness. I'm going to take care of myself now so that when I'm 60, I don't lose all my money. Or I'm 70, I don't lose all my money and I don't have any inheritance for my babies. It's a big way of looking at it. Where do you want to do? Do you want to spend everything in the last 6 months of life, or do you want to be fine? Take care of yourself. Do you guys have any questions? Cool. We're all done.